Have you ever had one of those moments where someone crosses a line so outrageously, so unbelievably, that your brain takes a second to catch up? That was exactly how my day began. I just wrapped up a long gaming session, slumped comfortably on the couch, savoring that sweet moment of victory. When it happened. The knock. Not just any knock. The kind that carries trouble on the other side before you even open the door. And sure enough, when I pulled it open, there she stood. Karen. The kind of Karen who doesn't make requests. She issues demands, like the world itself owes her a favor. But this time, the object of her entitlement wasn't something small. She had her sights set on my PS5. Before I explain what happened next, let me set the scene. Karen was planted on my porch, arms crossed like she was laying down the law, her eyes narrowed into a glare sharp enough to cut glass. Standing behind her was her son, wide-eyed, practically glowing with hero worship, like his mom was about to save the world. But this wasn't one of those harmless, "Can we borrow your console?" kind of things. No. Karen had already skipped to the boss level of audacity. "She came to take my console. That's my son's. I'm taking it," she snapped, before I even had the chance to say hello. For a moment, I just stood there, stunned, frozen, wondering if I'd actually heard her right. Was this woman really threatening to take my PS5 off my porch in broad daylight? But Karen doesn't stop. She doesn't pause or think things through. She goes straight for the nuclear option. And right on cue, she whipped out her phone and declared, "I'm calling the police." Now I know most people in that situation would panic. They'd stammer, try to reason, maybe offer some kind of compromise. But me? I wasn't like most people. I had an ace tucked neatly up my sleeve. See, I work closely with the state attorney on certain cases. Yes, that state attorney, the one whose office carries real legal weight. So as she dialed 911, convinced she held all the power, I simply said, calm as a still lake, "Before you call, Karen, you should probably know I've already spoken with the state attorney about this kind of harassment. That did it." Her smug grin faltered instantly. It was like watching a villain in a movie get caught halfway through their evil monologue. The confidence on her face drained fast, leaving behind a flicker of panic she couldn't quite hide. But here's the thing. I wasn't just trying to scare her off. I wanted her to understand just how serious this really was. This wasn't about a gaming console anymore. It was about boundaries, respect, and the wild arrogance of thinking you can just claim something that isn't yours because you feel entitled to it. And Karen, she was about to learn that lesson the hard way. I figured that would be the end of it, but of course it wasn't. About an hour later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't need a crystal ball to know who it was. Sure enough, her voice came through the line, teetering between outrage and desperation. I don't understand. My son needs that PS5, she blurted, like repeating it would somehow rewrite reality. I didn't flinch. I kept my tone steady, free of any emotion. I'd long since learned that people like Karen thrive on reactions, and I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction. "Karen," I said evenly, "we've already spoken with the police. Any attempt to take the console now is harassment, and it will have serious consequences. Please respect my property and my legal rights." Her voice cracked, the entitled edge slipping into something more frantic. "You can't just—" "I can," I cut her off before she could twist things, "and I have. Both the police and the state attorney are fully aware of the situation, and that's when it got surreal." Karen reappeared, not at my door this time, but in my neighbor's yard. She was trying to play some bizarre game of proximity, shouting over the fence like a desperate villain scrambling for a lifeline. At the same time, she was on her phone again, calling the police, spinning her little narrative that I was the one in the wrong. But what she didn't seem to grasp was that the officers already had the full story. They documented her behavior, logged everything. By now, her antics weren't just pointless. They were building a paper trail, one that could end very badly for her. I watched from a safe distance, more exasperated than angry. This whole thing had spiraled far past a gaming console. It had become a masterclass in boundaries, accountability, and the dangerous illusion of privilege. Her son stood beside her, looking increasingly mortified, slowly realizing that his mom wasn't the superhero she wanted him to think she was. When the officers finally arrived again, Karen's bravado had crumbled into visible panic. They spoke to her calmly but firmly, laying out the facts. Any more trespassing, any further attempt to seize my property, and they'd be forced to take legal action. Their advice was simple and clear: leave. I didn't need to lift a finger. The law spoke for me, the most satisfying moment of the night. Watching Karen shrink. From the self-proclaimed enforcer of the neighborhood, she became a quiet, defeated figure shuffling away down the street. All this chaos, because she thought my PS5 belonged to her. To most, it might have been just a console. To me, it represented my line in the sand, my patience, my right to say no, but little did Karen know. The real twist was still waiting around the corner, and it would be the final blow that ended her crusade once and for all. As her shaky voice faded from that last phone call, I heard it, the distant wail of sirens cutting through the night. My heartbeat didn't even quicken. I knew exactly how this was going to play out. Karen, however, had no idea. She was about to step into something far bigger than a petty PS5 tug-of-war. Within minutes, 2 uniformed officers walked up to my front door. I welcomed them inside, keeping my voice steady as I explained everything from the top. Karen, of course, tried to butt in immediately. "This is ridiculous. My son," she started. But one of the officers raised a hand in that practiced, polite way that says, "Not yet." I laid it all out. How Karen had shown up uninvited, threatened to take my console, declared it belonged to her son, and then called the police in some twisted attempt to intimidate me. The officers listened closely, scribbling in their notepads, exchanging subtle glances with each other as the picture became painfully clear. And then I saw it, that flicker in Karen's eyes. The fire that had fueled her tantrum just an hour earlier was dying fast. The woman who'd marched onto my porch like a one-woman storm cloud was starting to shrink under the weight of reality. One of the officers asked, "Do you have any other information that could help us wrap this up?" I didn't miss a beat. "Yes," I said with a calm smile. "I've already consulted with the state attorney about harassment and unlawful threats. They advise me on my rights. If anyone tries to take my property by force, it escalates quickly." Karen's jaw dropped. She opened and closed her mouth like a fish yanked out of water. It was clear she hadn't expected me to know the law or to have actual legal backing. The officer turned to her, keeping his tone professional but firm. He explained that attempting to seize someone else's property without permission wasn't just rude, it was a criminal matter. Real consequences, real charges. Karen's attempts to twist the story fell apart right there. Her arguments stumbled, her voice wavered, and every excuse she tried sounded weaker than the last. Her son stood beside her, quiet now. His earlier excitement drained into a mix of confusion and embarrassment, and honestly, I felt a small pang of sympathy for him. He hadn't asked for any of this. But his mother, she had dug herself into a hole and was sinking fast. The officers made it crystal clear the PS5 was mine, period. Any further attempts to take it would be treated as harassment, maybe worse. Karen, realizing she'd crossed a line she couldn't walk back over, muttered something about a misunderstanding before finally retreating. When the door shut behind her, the room felt different. The adrenaline that had been coursing through my veins started to fade, replaced by a strange mix of relief and disbelief. I'd kept my PS5, avoided a confrontation, and made sure Karen had a reality check she wouldn't forget anytime soon. But even then, a small part of me wondered, was it really over? Or was she somewhere already scheming her next move? When I realized Karen wasn't just going to let it go, I decided it was time to bring in the heavy hitters. I contacted the state attorney's office directly, laying everything out, her repeated harassment, the trespassing, the threats, and her failed attempts to take what wasn't hers. This time, it wasn't about warnings. It was about boundaries and accountability. Less than 24 hours later, a representative from the office got back to me. They'd reviewed the police reports, confirmed the timeline of events, and concluded what I already knew. Karen's behavior wasn't just obnoxious. It was legally actionable. Here's where the hammer dropped. The state attorney's office drafted a formal notice to deliver to Karen. Not a suggestion. Not a friendly reminder. a legally binding notice spelling out the consequences of any future harassment or property claims. When that envelope landed on her doorstep, I can only imagine the look on her face. This was the same woman who had strutted onto my porch like she owned the place. Now she was holding a letter carrying the full weight of the law. From that moment on, any more stunts from her wouldn't just involve the police. It could spiral straight into criminal charges. And the best part? All I had to do was tell the truth. The system handled the rest. Karen tried one last desperate phone call, whining that she didn't understand the law. I kept my voice calm and even. Karen, I told her, ignorance isn't a defense. If you keep pushing this, you're only making it worse for yourself. The entitlement that had fueled her this entire time finally hit a brick wall called reality. And reality, unlike Karen, didn't bend. In the days that followed, everything changed. No more pounding on my door, no more phone calls, no more shouting over fences. Even her son, once the wide-eyed accomplice, stayed quiet. The PS5 remained exactly where it belonged, safe, untouched mine. I'd protected my property, my peace of mind, and frankly, sent a message Karen would never forget. There's a limit to entitlement, and the law draws that line very clearly. Looking back, the whole ordeal felt surreal. A single gaming console had triggered a cascade of events that exposed just how far someone will go when they believe the rules don't apply to them. But it also reinforced something powerful. Knowing your rights matters. Staying calm under pressure matters. And when you bring the right authorities into the picture, even the loudest Karen can't shout over the law. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where someone tries to strong-arm you out of what's rightfully yours, remember this story. Stand your ground, document everything, and don't be afraid to let the law do the talking. What started as Karen's PS5 crusade ended as a full-on lesson in accountability, a lesson she and everyone watching this story won't soon forget. Wow, what a wild ride, right? If you enjoyed watching me stand my ground and protect what's mine, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any more insane encounters like this. Drop a comment below telling me what you'd do if someone tried to take your console. And of course, smash that like button if you love watching karma catch up with entitlement. Trust me, you're going to want to see what happens next.